How does a social media ban end up toppling a government? We're going to talk about Nepal, where a single government directive didn't just cause some online outrage. No, it triggered a full-blown, youth-led revolution that brought the state to its knees in just a matter of days.
I mean, really think about it for a second. Imagine your digital world just vanished overnight. No Facebook, no Instagram, no WhatsApp, no YouTube, no X, all of it just gone. For the youth of Nepal, this wasn't just some inconvenience. It was like severing a limb. It cut off their connections, their way of expressing themselves, their entire community, and it became the catalyst for something so much bigger. You see, the social media ban, that was the spark. But the whole situation was already a powder keg just waiting to blow. The real fuel here was years of anger just simmering under the surface. Anger over corruption, nepotism, and a system that offered pretty much zero hope for its younger generation.
Okay, so let's break down exactly how this digital spark lit that fire. We're talking about a shift from online anger to a massive physical mobilization on the streets.
And the speed of this escalation was just staggering. On September 4th, the government issues its directive. Just 4 days later, peaceful protests start popping up. But by the very next day, it had completely exploded into a nationwide uprising. That's how fast this thing moved.
And this really gets to the heart of that fuel we were talking about. The anger wasn't just about apps. It was fueled by this deep, widespread corruption and an economy that was going nowhere. Young people were watching the children of the political elite, the so-called Nepo kids, flaunting their wealth all over social media, while they were facing a future with basically no opportunities. The frustration was just palpable.
And that's why, from the very beginning, the demands went so far beyond just getting Facebook back. The youth on the streets were calling for fundamental, systemic change, an end to corruption, and a demand for real, genuine political accountability.
But a movement that started so peacefully would soon take a really tragic and violent turn. And it all happened within its first 24 hours. This was the rallying cry. Shut down corruption, not social media. You saw it on placards, you heard it in the chants. It just perfectly captured what they wanted, a peaceful, focused demand for better governance. You even had students in their school uniforms joining in, which was this powerful symbol of just how deep the discontent really ran.
The critical moment, the turning point, came on day one. As thousands of protesters marched toward the parliament building, they were met with these heavy barricades. And when a group of them dismantled one of those barriers, the confrontation with security forces just began to spiral completely out of control. Security forces responded with tear gas, rubber bullets, and then, unbelievably, live ammunition. By the end of that very first day, 19 people were dead. The government did end up rolling back the social media ban that night, but honestly, it was far too late. The movement was no longer about a ban, it was about getting justice. The violence of day one only poured gasoline on the fire. Day two would see the uprising escalate into a full-blown political earthquake that shook the entire country to its core. The chain of events was just breathtaking. Fueled by grief and absolute outrage, protesters stormed symbols of state authority. Fires started breaking out in government complexes. The army had to be called in. Curfews were imposed, and the country's main airport was shut down. The capital was in total chaos.
And the result of all that intense pressure? The Prime Minister, K.P. Sharma Oli, resigned. It was a stunningly swift political fall, a direct consequence of a generation that had simply had enough. But this victory, as you can imagine, came at a staggering price. The devastating human cost and the political fallout, well, they continue to shape Nepal to this very day. The final numbers are just gut-wrenching. In total, 76 people were killed across the country and over 2,000 were injured.
A doctor who was right there on the front lines described the horrific reality on the ground. He said it felt like a butcher's house. Hospitals were completely overwhelmed with gunshot wounds and severe injuries. It was just chaos and carnage.
In the aftermath, you had human rights groups like Amnesty International coming in, and they began documenting what they called an unlawful use of force by security. They reported live rounds being fired directly into crowds, the indiscriminate use of tear gas, and now they are urgently calling for an impartial investigation to hold those responsible accountable. So, where does all this leave Nepal now? The uprising achieved a seismic political shift, sure, but the revolution itself is far from over. The fight for the country's future is very much still ongoing.
The central question facing the movement today is this one. How do you transform that raw, powerful protest energy into lasting, sustainable reform?
It's a challenge that, really, every successful movement has to confront eventually.
An internal debate has already begun. Some activists and supporters have raised concerns online, arguing that when the protests turned violent and destructive, the movement lost some of its moral high ground and its focus. This really reflects the complex struggle for finding a clear path forward.
Ultimately, what happened in Nepal wasn't just a riot over a social media ban. It was a profound wake-up call. It was a generation declaring loud and clear that they will no longer be silent and that they demand a future of dignity, fairness, and opportunity. Their work is far from done, and you can be sure the world is now watching.